Yeah. And that's why I pick my nails. I can't stop, like, I've got an insatiable need to be, like, fidgeting with my fingers, my hands.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. I realized just like when I'll be watching back the guide that I like every episode I'll have something in my hands, like a fucking toothpick, or I'll take my ring off and start playing my ring, or like playing with my ring. Doesn't sound too good.
Every
Start playing my ring
episode?
halfway through the episode. I can't stop myself.
Three, two, one. So in the very first week of this show, Lewis, we spoke about the backlash that LGBTQ plus people receive when they come out on online, on Twitter and things like that. And we spoke quite a bit about Elliot Page and about him coming out as trans at the end of last year. And just thought I'd bring up a heartwarming little story about that. Apparently, Elliot Page put a picture on Instagram or something recently where he was topless. You know, when guys go to the beach, they wear shorts, take their tops off, stuff like that. So he put up a photo of himself topless, and there was like an outcry of support for it. So I thought it was like a really happy sort of moment, just to show that despite the thoughts that we have on this show, sometimes social media isn't quite as bad as we depict it to be.
Right, yeah, I have, yeah. Sometimes the voice is much louder than the reality, isn't it? I thought you were going to say that the good news was that she did like a screenshot of the guide podcast or something. I was like, that's brilliant news, but that's cool as well.
Yeah. So if you didn't know, this is Guide to the 21st Century, a conversational podcast between two friends, Lewis and I, discussing topical issues and trying to navigate the minefield that is life in the 21st century.
Each week thus far, Scott and I have went away during the week and thought of a topic that's been playing in our minds, and then we've brought that to the podcast where we've had our discussive format, breaking it down and tried to reach a couple of new conclusions that maybe we wouldn't have been able to reach on our own.
Yep. So first, you're up this week, Lewis. What have your thoughts been kicking around?
So I realized that we're going to have to like make this like a mini series by now. It's because like in episode 6 we talked about the disassociating art from the artist. We talked about like J.K. Rowling and like other game creators and stuff like that. In episode 8 we addressed that issue where we spoke specifically about cancel culture. Because we realised there was probably a lot more to speak about. And this week there's actually been a bit more in the news to the cancel culture, and I think that I want to talk about a little bit more in depth again, but this time I want to specifically talk about holding people accountable for their actions in the past, specifically. So maybe a bit leaning towards like justification for cancelling, and a little bit of a more of a nuanced issue. Where we're not just talking about people being outwardly violent type of thing.
We have definitely gone on a couple of arcs in the show. I think the first like 5 episodes were about social justice, basically, or they had that theme running through them anyway. And now we kind of have gone on to this sort of cancel culture arc. So it shows how the themes are like running through our minds across the weeks, I guess.
Right, and also I think it demonstrates how we're learning a little bit about a topic and then asking ourselves more questions about it. It's because like these are this week I want to talk about some of the more nuanced questions. And this all came about because I started reading I actually didn't start reading about it. My sister told me about it. This upset that's happened in the news to do with the supermodel Chrissy Tiegan, who you don't know. Do you know?
I know who Chrissy Teigen is. I wasn't aware that this had happened though.
Right. Okay. That's good then. So yeah, Chrissy Teigen. I didn't know who Chrissy Teigen was, but it turns out she is a supermodel, and I don't know what the hell the difference between a model and a supermodel is, but apparently
she's super at it.
Yeah, she's like fucking great. She's had like a couple of shows, and she's like a content creator and stuff like that. So she's just like a personality. She's also known for being the husband of John Legend,
The wife.
The wife of John Legend. Yeah, John Legend is the husband. It fucking doesn't matter, man. It's fucking 21st century. Fucking you with your labels. What you like? So basically it came out in the news a week or so back. Chrissy Teigen decided that she was going to remove herself from Twitter because she'd basically been put up with the negativity on the platform. She's had too much of it. And in response, and she eventually did leave, and in response to this, another model who's called Courtney Stodden basically tweeted back at her and basically called the move hypocritical. It's like, wow, I can't believe you're calling out the negativity on Twitter after like some of the things that you've said. And there's a couple of screenshots of tweets that Chrissy Teigen had directed at this Courtney Stodden. And this was back in 2011, 2010. So it's quite a few years ago. And we'll show you on screen right now what some of these tweets are. But basically, they're like, some, they're pretty bad. I hate you, calling someone an idiot, asking about their family, type of things, like accusing them of taking drugs. And apparently, as well, we don't have a screenshot of this, but there were also DMs, in which we're basically telling her to like kill herself. And there was a couple other comments about, like taking a dirt nap, or like one of the good ones was like, I dream about you dying. Like just like I think clear examples of bullying. And basically what's happened is that this blew up quite a bit, and then people started going through the Chrissy's old tweets and started pulling up a bunch more stuff, and it led to the cancellation process, which we have spoken to up until now. So before I go any further, you've read tweets.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically like Courtney tweets, and you've also had an opportunity to look at some of the other tweets that she's posted to other celebrities, because she's quite prolific. She at one point she deleted 60,000 tweets over the last like couple of years, so to try and like cover up this type of stuff. So I'm curious to hear what you think. Like looking at these like tweets that we have on the screen right now, do you think this is cancelable offence? Do you think this is the type of thing that she kind of had coming?
I think the first thing that jumps to my mind is this was 10 years ago. Now,
10 years, yeah.
When I say that, that doesn't necessarily mean that she shouldn't be held accountable for the things that she said.
Mm-hmm.
I think when it's been brought up, when it's been brought to light, when she's mentioned that Twitter is so negative and someone's pointed out that she's kind of hypocritical for this,
yeah,
I think it's probably important for her to address it and to be of the mind to say, I was young, I was stupid, these were mistakes that I made, I'm sorry for anyone that I've hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Should she be cancelled for it? No, I don't think so. This is clearly an error of judgment from someone who was, and we found out that she was 16 years old at the time. She was a kid.
No, that's not right, actually.
Oh,
the
sorry.
Girl,
was it the other one who was 16 at the time?
Courtney was 16. Yeah, sorry.
Oh, okay.
I might not have made that clear. I would note that at the time, Courtney was 26.
Yeah, you mean Chrissy? Chrissy was 26 at the time.
Yes, these fucking names, man.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh,
so
okay.
the offender was 26 when she
Right.
posted these against a 16-year-old girl.
That changes things a little bit then. It changes a little bit in my mind where it's like you're 26 years old and you're saying this kind of shit online. Like how immature do you have to be doing that, first of all?
Mm-hmm.
I think people probably just weren't aware of this stuff back then. I don't know how much this would have been brought to light of like cyberbullying, things like that. It's definitely become an issue that people are more aware of as the years have gone on. And like I say, I think it's important for her to go back and say, I realised this was wrong. I've changed now. Apologise for the people that she tweeted at. That's important. Should she be cancelled though? Probably not. I don't think so.
Yeah, this is why I thought this was quite a good topic. It's because there's a bit of debate there, in terms of what I think. Like I'm kind of at the stage where I'm like looking at these tweets that she's posting, and like, a lot of them are just like stupid, like edgy humor that I can appreciate. But like, see, like particularly the Courtney ones, those are the ones that for me that I identify that as bullying. I don't think there's any doubt about it, and it's especially because it was a young girl and she was a bit older. Like that's the type of thing that there has to be some sort of repercussions for that. You should have known better. You're using the internet. In terms of being cancelled, it's kind of hard. I'm at the state. For this situation, I kind of think like, I think that a fan of hers would be totally and utterly justified to just boycott everything that she does in the future. Like if you see those messages and like bullying and those tweets and stuff like that, it's like fuck it. If you decide to throw her to the ditch, like that's totally your prerogative, and I think you'd actually be quite justified in doing that. It's because what we are talking about here is not people making like crass humor. It does go a step beyond that. Like in our cancel culture episode, we addressed two issues which you think were warranted offences, which I think justified cancellation, and one of them was inciting violence, and the other one was we kind of couldn't quite agree on this, but the other suggestion was fake news, or like obviously putting out fake information out there.
Yeah,
sure, yeah. When it comes to like bullying or harassment, that's one where it's I like, now that I'm thinking about it, I can kind of understand why she would need to be. There needs to be some form of punishment for this, you know, or like, or some type of message or something like that. It's because I feel that these actions that were carried out, it's like it's not good enough, for one thing. And like we said, like being 26-year-old, like that's the kind of age where you should be old enough. And so basically, yeah, that's where I stand. I think this is not quite good enough. I can understand why people would feel they want to cancel her. Personally, I don't think I would, but I kind of understand it.
I've got a question for you
Okay,
about the tweets that Chrissy Teigen sent. So
to Courtney.
yeah, I think
Okay.
there are a couple of tweets that are like, you know, when she says things like "I hate you" and she
Mm.
says basically calling her an idiot, stuff like that. Now
Mhm.
there are a couple of tweets that talk about like Courtney Stodden taking a dirt nap, and there is
Yeah.
one tweet that specifically says "Go to sleep forever." Do you think in this moment that Chrissy Teigen has sent these tweets, is she specifically, does she want her to kill herself, or is that something that she's just saying as an online troll to get a reaction? Like if Courtney Stodden had then gone on and killed herself, do you think Chrissy Teigen would be like that was her goal? Do you think
No,
that's what she was
no.
trying to do?
Yeah. No, I don't think for a second she was trying to get this girl to kill herself. You know, I think she disliked her. I genuinely think that she had a problem, and from what I seem to understand, at the time, a lot of people had a problem with her. It's because the reason that this Courtney became famous was because she was like a pageant queen down like Southern America. At the age of 16, she married a 53-year-old celebrity. Um, I can't remember what he did, but basically it was kind of a bit of a hubbub because she married someone so much older, and it seemed like kind of gold diggery status. So she's literally a young model. He's like some old bald dude. So like I think a lot of celebrities, it seems like kind of ganged up on her, and it seems to me that Chrissy genuinely didn't like this girl, you know, for some reason. I don't know
That
why, when
much
they
is
actually spoke
clear.
to each other. Yeah, exactly. This isn't just like, it's because a lot of the other tweets Chrissy's posted are just like literally just jabbing people with a stick. You know, it's like random people online just trying to get a rise out of them.
Yeah.
For the like the Courtney case, it does seem a bit more vindictive than that. I don't. Surely not. She didn't want this girl to kill herself. But at the end
I
of the day, I
agree.
think it was bullying, and I think like that's bad in my book. You know, it's quite a bad thing to do.
It seems like ignorance for me. It seems that Chrissy Teigen has been ignorant to what these tweets might actually do to someone, what they might actually make someone feel. I would
Mm,
agree with you. She talks about like she's clearly, in my mind, she's being like satirical in the sense that she's making a joke about committing suicide,
mm-hmm.
which is not okay. First of all, I don't think that's like an okay thing to do to someone online. But
Right, right, yeah.
I think it looks like she doesn't actually want that. It's just something that she's
No,
said. So I think those are the tweets that kind of make me think, okay, this needs to be addressed. Like the fact that you've been making those jokes about it, that's what needs to address. That's like the line that you stepped over. It's almost like a different stage of harassment at that point, isn't it? Where it becomes
exactly,
something
yeah.
entirely more.
Hmm. That is the thing about it, isn't it? So it's like I saw the comments about Courtney, and I'm like, okay, I kind of understand why the cancellation has come about and why people have gotten really upset about this. But what I found really interesting when I was just like researching this topic, because obviously like I literally just looked into YouTube, Chrissy Teigen, you know, and like a bunch of the top videos are mostly like YouTube drama personalities talking about, or celebrity dramas, you know, like fucking YouTube drama circle anyway, talking about this, and like they'd like talk about a little bit of the past, talk about Courtney, and then they'd spend like most of the rest of the video just looking at the tweets themselves to like different celebrities and talking about how like horrific they are, you know, like how horrible this woman is, and talking about all these implications. So like we both agreed that the ones to Courtney are like out of hand, you know, and like worth like that you should be accountable in some way to that type of information out there. You can't fucking just kill someone to kill yourself and expect nothing to happen about it. But like the other ones, she like, it seems to me when I'm looking at them that Chrissy clearly has a very, at least 10 years ago, had a very edgy sense of humor. You know, it was pretty, shock factor was involved there. Like there's a lot of like ones to do with like kids, because she went through a phase of watching Toddlers and Tiaras, and like one of the tweets I remember I saw was like, oh, they finally got a boy on the show. Yes, finally something for me to look at. you know? It's like so a bit like just edgy humor, and like a lots of jokes about how like the show's like all for pedos, and it's like, oh, I'm getting like hot and bothered watching this type of thing. Just like kind of humor that I can kind of appreciate, but at the same time, it's like I can understand why folk might be upset about it. But basically, when I'm watching people now that the cancellation is in place, every single one of these tweets, which in my mind are just jokes, are like evidence that Chrissy is the devil now. You know, like so. I'm curious to see what you think about that. Because for me, it seems like we have a scenario in which someone's done something bad, clearly, and this is particularly related to Courtney. But then, like, once the crowd has started piling up and people have decided, yes, this is someone that deserves cancelling, how do we draw the line between all these other things, which to me are just edgy humor? How do we stop that becoming part of like the cancellation process? There are people talking about getting like taking away her kids. There are people saying that she's an unfit mother because of like these jokes that involve minors. And like, you know, when you say it down and you write it, and it kind of makes a degree of sense. But to me, this is obviously a joke. So how do these things not run away with themselves?
I think when it comes to jokes online, like the jokes that you're talking about, discussing minors and these toddlers and tiaras, when she's tweeting out in general about like the boys being on the show and something for her, I'm sort of like, who's that one hurting, kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? The kids on the show, are they being hurt for this any more than they already would be if there are paedophiles watching this? It's like that seems like a bit more of a concern than the joke that someone's making about it. I think it comes down to like the step over the line when all of a sudden she's telling someone to kill themselves. Now, I don't think, is anybody reading this tweet that says go to sleep forever and like bursting out laughing? You know, like it's kind of like, oh, that's a joke, but it's like no one's
Not very
fucking
funny.
no one's fucking
Yeah.
laughing at this. Like this is just like harassment. And because she's went and done that, that makes you look at everything else that she said in a different light, because it's
In a
like
much more negative
you
light.
could have seen those ones as jokes before, but now she's done this thing, and that's clearly no over the line of joke. So it's like, oh, what were these things also in that vein as well? So I think it almost kind of by stepping over the line like that, it kind of tarnishes the things that you've done before as well.
It does, doesn't it?
I think it's a bit over the line for someone to be saying that our kids should be taken away and stuff like that.
Well, that, yeah.
I feel like I can separate the jokes from the bad stuff. You know, when it comes to these basically paedophilia jokes that she's making, I can separate that from the harassment. I think that's the step over the line for me, where it's like it's no longer edgy humor to be saying this shit. It's now just harassment online. No one's laughing at this. You're just being a horrible person. You know, that's I feel like it's a hard line for me.
Yeah, it is. I think it's a clear line, actually. I think it's quite obvious. Like exactly like you said there, someone's being hurt by the text against Courtney. The other ones, someone isn't being hurt. You know, it's just someone being. It's just her being an idiot. You know, but but that's what I'm saying. Like when I started researching this topic, the reason I started researching it is because I heard about Courtney. And from like the headline or whatever I'd read, I was like, fucking hell, that sounds like a really good example of where someone deserves to be cancelled. And I started watching the videos and I'm like, there's one thing she's done out of line here. The rest of these are just stupid messages that like back 10 years ago were funny. Why are people not able to do that? Do you think that like, where's this vindictiveness come from?
I don't know. Maybe people get a kick out of it. You know, maybe they get people that are trying to cancel her get. There's probably a proportion of them who genuinely think that she should be cancelled. You know,
right?
I'd be willing to bet there's a reasonable proportion of people that are trying to cancel her that actually think that all of these things are over the line. And I think there's a discussion to be had there about harassment online. You know, that's something that we can speak about. Maybe some people just get a kick out of it, that they're having some sort of like influence in the world. I'm not entirely sure. I think in terms of how this is like coming about, people will kind of make up their own mind, right? They'll either jump on the bandwagon of cancelling her, or they'll be like, yeah, these are pretty bad, and they won't watch her stuff anymore, or they won't be bothered.
Mm-hmm.
So she'll see negative impacts from this, going forward. I think it's probably because she's tweeting this on the platform of Twitter. I would say that it's probably Twitter's responsibility to nip this in the bud. People have brought it to their attention. It would probably be up to Twitter to be like, you're now breaking the terms and conditions of the website. You need to take these tweets down. You need to issue an apology, or we delete your account, sort of thing.
Okay.
And by her making an apology about it, that will draw attention to it. People will then see the tweets, and they can then go on and judge the tweets for themselves. And she will see negative backlash from it. Like this will negatively impact her career, her social status online. It'll negatively impact her life. So that's the punishment I see in it. I don't think that people necessarily. Well, I guess that is a form of cancelling, because people will see these and say, I'm not going to consume this content anymore. But I think that's about as far as it goes. For you to tell somebody else that they shouldn't be viewing this because of what you feel, that then goes a bit. That's like sort of pushing your boundaries on someone else, isn't it? That's then you saying we should be cancelling this because of this reason, instead of you being like, I'm gonna, vote with my view here, not view this content. She'll get one less view because of it, one less follower, and tell people why, and then let them make up their own mind. That's why I don't like the cancel culture engine, because it's pushing your boundaries on someone else. Some boundaries that you have no right to decide either.
Well, it's like you. So the thing you said there was that people will be able to decide. People will be able to read this and have an idea of whether they think this is inappropriate or not, and then they'll decide to, not watch any of her content, or stop supporting her, or unfollow her, whatever. And that's what I did, and that's what you've done now to start talking about it. But like, the experience I've had researching this issue has been overwhelmingly negative. And like all these videos I'm watching, that's what I'm saying, that they're like finding tweets and saying like, oh, isn't this just gross? Isn't this disgusting? She shouldn't have ever said that. And like, it's the people, like, one of the videos, apparently, in Hollywood, there's been like in the last year, 6 months or something like that, it's been like, it's come out that in Hollywood, the upper echelons is like a fucking ring of child sex trafficking, and like there's a bunch of really important people involved. A guy in a video had hundreds of thousands of views. It was like the top result was implicating Tiegan in that, because like she had a couple tweets that were like vaguely dodgy and mentioned kids and mentioned like pedos and that type of thing. It's like, we're not talking about people here taking reasonable reactions. We're talking about just like, this thing's just got a life of its own now. It's like I don't even know if this is individual people trying to say, I'm going to try and get her ruined. It's just like the mass of it just seems to propagate that, like there's a story that comes out, news journals start covering the story, YouTubers start covering the story, and it's not in their interest to try and give an unbiased view.
No.
They want it to be as shocking as possible, So like, when I was reading YouTube comments, and I know that's not a good, statistical method to try and, gauge people's views. It's because people that are typing are going to be the most emotional in the first place, and stuff like that. But like, it was just vitriol. And like, so many of the comments, the thing that really got me was so many of the comments said like, I can't believe nobody knew she was so toxic up until now. And to that, I was like, the thing about that is that 10 years ago, that wasn't toxic.
I don't know. I think this probably was toxic 10 years ago, and she did get a fair amount of backlash for it. Like, I would imagine so. I think in the tweets...
Well, she wasn't cancelled, like...
She wasn't cancelled.
She has, like, over the years, it has, like, you're right, there are, like, videos. Like, there was a video from, like, 4 years ago talking about her bad record, and, like the way that she just, like... She literally starts fights with people and stuff like that. So I suppose, like, there is a degree of toxicity there. But, like... I don't know. I feel that... A full 10 years ago, the state of social media was that there were many more accounts that could be openly like flagrant with people and expect just to get away with that. Like, I kind of feel that 10 years ago in social media, like a big personality could just go around jabbing the bear, and that would have been extremely amusing to people.
Yeah, I think so. I think over the course of the last decade, websites like Twitter and Facebook have been under increasing pressure, and probably rightfully so, to clamp down on this sort of thing. You know, if a
Mm-hmm.
celebrity did this today,
Mm-hmm.
that would
Oh,
be immediate cancel. You know,
immediately cancelled. Yes.
the only reason that there's like discussion on whether she should be cancelled or not is because it was 10 years ago and it was in a different time.
Mm-hmm.
And there still should be some punishment for this, I think.
I agree. Mm-hmm.
In today's standards, when people talking about mental health so much with Twitter and Facebook trying to be more open, more
Inclusive.
progressive towards these sort of issues,
Mm-hmm.
this goes against like everything that people in today's day and age hate. You know what I mean? They would hate this in
Mm-hmm.
today's day.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
A big celebrity said this today. That
That would not. Yeah.
that
Yeah.
would be
Yeah.
the end of their
Back
career.
10 years ago, I think Chrissy made a name of herself with these like quirky, snappy,
Maybe, yeah.
sharp, really replies to people. I think that's why she got a bit of a following. Because, like, as I said, she's like tweets like 20 times a day. You know, it's what she does. She's a rampant Twitter. But you're right. The dynamic has changed in quite a big way, in which now that type of thing is just no longer acceptable. You know.
And I think part of that might be the cancel culture engine that is growing. Somewhere along the line in the last 10 years, a group of people realised that they had the power to do this kind of shit online where they cancel someone. It was power that they never had 10 years ago, but it's power that's been building over the last decade. And now it's like so powerful that they can dig up tweets from 10 years ago, and that's almost enough ammunition to go and cancel someone, you know? Cancel culture has grown itself to the point where it now has power to do stuff like this.
Well, that's kind of a thing that I feel about this whole concept of cancel culture is like it's almost like proof that people aren't doing this to try and make Chrissy a better person. Like, you don't spend hours and hours going through 100,000 tweets to try and find the bad examples because you like this person. You know, you're doing this because you want this person to be hurt. You know, it seems this is the case with a lot of the examples of cancel culture we find. For instance, like just before Guardians of the Galaxy 3, it probably wasn't very coincidental that James Gunn got cancelled for his text, you know, for his messages on Twitter, which happened, you know, several years before that. It's like, it seems to me the very act of surfacing these old tweets from many, many years ago is almost incriminating in a way. It's like it almost gives away the fact that this is behavior that's not happening to be just. This is inherently vengeful behavior.
Yeah, there is something about it, isn't there? It's not like people are demanding an apology, or are they demanding an apology? They're just saying that she should be cancelled. You know, it really does strike me as where I'm like, this was like 10 years ago. It was a different time. And as much as she's said things along the line of "go kill yourself," I don't think that's ever what she intended. That's not what she meant.
No,
you know,
no.
She was doing that for a reaction, and people probably, you know, no one laughed at this. They scrolled by and they went, like sort of thing, like all the accounts that followed her for the vitriol that she was spewing online.
Yeah, they would have loved. Oh, well, I dare say they would have liked that type of thing.
And in today's society, it's more like, you know, you can't be making these jokes because these can actually hurt people. You know, 10 years ago, Chrissy Tiegan had no idea that these jokes were being taken seriously or hurting people. I bet you she was just ignorant. That's the big problem, ignorance, and that's probably the big problem when it comes to things like racism and sexism of like 10 years ago. People were just ignorant to the effect they were having, and once people become aware of that effect, that's when they have to sort of change what they're doing. Because today, I highly doubt Chrissy Teigen would say anything like this on Twitter.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's an interesting one in itself, right there, isn't it? It's because you suggested that like this is the type of thing that you should make a public apology for, and you should address it, and you know it seems likely to us that this is not the type of thing that would happen these days. How? And also related to like the whole idea of like, you know, you find out these messages from Courtney and you start thinking to yourself like, maybe there's something a bit darker to her character. You know, maybe like if she's willing to say these horrible things to a person, then maybe a bunch of these other tweets weren't so much of a joke, and they were just like her twisted mind, you know. So and we perceive that as funny. So the question becomes like, how can we move on from this? Like, how do we prove that she's changed? How does she come up to us with any evidence that that's not the person that she was? even though she was an adult at the time. Like she has made an apology, and it didn't go down well. It's because it sounded like she was talking directly to her sponsors. You know, it was one of those ones, not very unhuman being like. But that does make me wonder, how do you redeem your character?
I don't necessarily think that this having the backlash that it's had and then you doing something to redeem your character is remotely appropriate. I think if something like this comes out about you, you know, say for example, if one of us had a tweet that came out 10 years ago that was homophobic or sexist or something like that, you have to turn around and say, look, based on the tweets that I've put out for the last decade, I'm clearly not this person anymore. That's you have to, because if you have to change what you're doing now to reflect this backlash, then that shows that you're only changing because of the backlash you've received, right?
Right. Yeah.
So she would have had to put out an apology that said, look, I'm really sorry about this. I was young. I was stupid. This behaviour is inexcusable. I now realise that. If you look at my tweets over the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years, you'll see that this is not even close to the person I am anymore. I've learned that this is wrong. Like, I know that I'm not ignorant about this issue anymore. I know that this is wrong. You almost have to have proven that you're a better person or that you've changed already. And that you've because obviously Chrissy Teigen's forgotten about these things when she tweeted out she was leaving Twitter.
I don't think she has. It's because she deleted all of these tweets.
Maybe you're right.
She deleted Twitter.
That in itself,
for this reason.
That in itself is almost like damning evidence.
It's incriminating.
Exactly. Where it's like your apology actually doesn't mean jack shit because a couple of days ago you tried to delete evidence that you were actually
tried to hide this.
Yeah. You almost gonna have to own up to your behaviour, apologise for it, and show how you've distanced yourself from it now. To come out and to change something about yourself because of the backlash is just totally disingenuous, and I don't think people are going to buy that, you know. And deleting tweets that are old, people see through that shit. We talk about this all the time. These companies that make movies and these celebrities that talk to people on Twitter, they treat people like they're stupid, and and they're not. People are not stupid. They see through these false gestures like that. And you're saying the apology sounds like it's to a sponsor. People can see that. They're not stupid. They look at this and they're like, this is a PR response. And that's not enough for them. It's not good enough, in terms of an apology. So people realize this,
Yeah. Well, that's the thing about it, It's it just does make me wonder, how do we, the way we're describing it, it makes the process of cancelling sound like a death sentence. It's really hard for you to come back from it unless you have changed significantly within the last 10 years and actually realize that the person you are is different. The way that we're talking now, because it seems, given our precursory information about who Chrissy is, it seems like she may not have changed drastically from the person. I'm not, obviously, the type of shit she's texting now is not nearly as bad. It's mentioned now is not nearly as bad. But the fact that she's continuing to hide evidence from us suggests that maybe there isn't sufficient proof there that she is a more mature, better person. And if that isn't the case, does she deserve this? Is this warranted, or is it just should we just even if she hasn't changed, is cancellation still valid or not here?
I think, first of all, I think she probably has changed. That there's no part about me that thinks that she hasn't grown and matured and realised that this kind of shit is a mistake now, and this is bullying.
Having the ability to prove that, is not necessarily simple.
I think the fact that she went back and deleted tweets and tried to hide evidence is that's almost like damage control to me, where she's gone back and she's realised that she might be a bit fucked and she's tried to hide stuff so that it wouldn't get bad. And that's almost to stop how severe the backlash is, if that makes sense.
Yeah, damage control, like you said.
Which in itself is bad to me. That seems like a bad thing for you to do, for you to not own up to your mistake and show your mistake to the world and be like, I did this, it was wrong. To go back and almost do damage control, it makes it seem like she's just trying to save money at that point, right?
Right. Yeah.
Where
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
about
Mhm.
it's about her image now, it's about her career, it's about who she is. It's not about actually apologizing. It's just about limiting the damage that she's done to herself. That in itself is quite damning, I think.
Mhm.
So that almost tips it in the direction of maybe you should be cancelled because you're not really responsible enough to be like having this following because you're deleting evidence that you've done stuff in the past.
Mhm. Well, here's another one as well. So I'm saying that it seems that she maybe didn't change from this person that she was, but at the end of the day, like we've mentioned so far, we are viewing material that was from a different time and a different culture. And we can definitely agree that over just the course of 10 years, I think our culture has changed significantly, you know. So it might be hard to say with any certainty whether she's changed or not, but we can definitely say that the culture that she finds herself in is different and that the cultures have different moral values without a doubt. If you know, like for instance, like you just said earlier, like someone like just like throwing out abuse online these days, maybe 10, 15 years ago that would be like, lol, what a troll. But these days it's like, you know, you need to think about that person's mental health. You know, you don't know what situation they could be in, type of thing. How how can we possibly account for that? How is that? I don't see, like, I don't see how we can possibly look at any material that's like 10 years old and look at that with a modern day lens and then take justifiable action on that.
No, you're right. I agree with you when you say that you can't look back on that because standards are always evolving. You know, when it comes to mental health, it comes to how we should act online. The standards have really increased over the last like 10, 15 years.
So yeah, dramatically, I think.
So 10 years ago, I think it's pretty obvious that she wasn't aware of the damage that she was doing. And then 10 years in the future, she becomes aware of it. It's not about having never made a mistake because we can look back on this and clearly say this is like wrong, this behavior
Hmm.
is damaging. We can look back and we can know that now. It's not about never having made a mistake. We can look back 10 years ago and see that this was quote unquote acceptable behavior.
Sure, more acceptable now. Yeah.
It's about her recognizing that this actually wasn't okay at the time, and now we know
Mm.
it's not okay. And that's why I keep coming back to the fact that she deleted these tweets. That's almost like, so I would imagine she's changed to the point where she won't write this online, but she's probably done that because that's the cultural norm, the cultural
Yeah.
acceptance. But
Hmm.
you've also gone away and deleted those tweets, so you're still not a nice person.
Yeah.
That's the kind of line in the sand for me where 10 years ago we can look at this and say, okay, different time, clearly wrong, admit how you were wrong, just look back and say you're sorry, take the
Hmm.
punishment that you deserve for it. But then she's gone away and deleted tweets, and it's like, well, you're just covering your own back now. You've just done that for damage control, and
Hmm.
that's almost like a nail in the coffin, you know, where it's like you're still pretty horrible, aren't you? You're not even
Yeah.
interested in like owning up to this. You just want to save some money at this point.
Right. So you want, I think I do it, like some proof of personal growth, you know, like you can still be the person that you were, but there needs to be an awareness of the environment you find yourself in. There needs to be a way that you conduct your actions. We need to see that, you know, maybe you are that same crooked person with a wicked sense of humor. That's fine, but you need to be aware of the other people that you're communicating with and this platform. You know, like we need some type of proof that that has at least been instilled in your brain through this process, and it and I agree. It does seem that the covering up method is, you know, it's almost like you would have thought her agents would say to her, "Do not fucking delete those tweets because it will look incriminating." You know, honestly.
Maybe they were the ones that were saying delete the rest of them
Uh,
before they get found.
Apparently her agent's left her. Yeah, she's like lost a bunch of
Okay.
contracts. Yeah, like I think she's been quite badly affected by it. Even like her family's businesses, like her mother ended up owning like a cookbook type of thing because she is the mother of a supermodel,
Right.
and all like, you know, the various family businesses have been like badly affected. And that she claimed that was part of the reason why she deleted those tweets, was to stop further harm from falling upon her family. And yeah, I don't think I buy that. Given what we've discussed here, I don't think that I can understand why you would be worried about that. But you have to realize that the damage has been done, and you're going to get major flack for it. You just need to work on damage control, and damage control is not hiding things. It's owning up.
When you talk about all these businesses getting having negative impacts because of this, she has to realize, her brand is herself. Chrissy Teigen is her brand, and all the family's businesses make this money partially because her brand is kind of attached to it, And if she's to ever if something like this is to ever come out about her brand gets devalued, therefore the businesses around her get devalued. So the punishment's clear in that regard. She's seeing the punishment. I don't think at this point, whether she gets fully cancelled or not, is it going to be much difference from the negative? Like, she's probably lost millions of dollars from this.
Oh, yeah. And many, many millions of potential future dollars. Like, options which were once available will no longer be available.
Yeah, and think about, she's married to John Legend, who now has this attachment to him.
That'll affect his image.
That'll affect his image, and maybe his albums won't sell as well next time he releases one. There's a lot of implications for this. Quite serious implications, I would think, for her and for her family. And I think that's punishment enough. That's the justification where I'm like, okay, she's seen a lot of negative impact on this. She's now going to be very careful about the shit that she puts online. And I'm like, she needs to learn from this, and she needs to grow. And this is like her strike, I don't think she'll get cancelled for this. But it's sort of like okay, you've had your chance now. Fool me once, shame on you, sort of thing. And if she isn't cancelled and she remains a sort of popular figure, if she does something like this again, she'll be done. But I don't think she'll be cancelled. But I think the punishment she's received is probably proportionate to what's happened, I would say.
Really? Right. Okay. Well, I mean, that will be interesting to see in the future, to see how badly this does affect her, because we do see instances of bounce back, but tend to have better public response immediately after the event than what we've seen thus far. I don't know if I feel that for like a first strike, this has been a pretty major first strike. This has affected many people in her family and herself and her children and like her career prospects and stuff like that. She will never be poor. She will never lose.
Nope.
She will never not have a house, or be able to care for her kids at the end of the day. So I'm not like worrying that she's fucking on the street now or anything, but I feel that for actions 10 years ago, it does feel like quite a large price to pay. But that makes me wonder, like, at the end of the day, she is a massive figure on social media, and she has massive followers and massive influence. Does it make sense that people with larger audiences and larger influences have a harsher punishment for this type of thing? Like, if it was just a random 25-year-old girl that had posted that and said to like another girl they don't like, you fucking die type of thing, probably not much would have come up with it. Maybe like a couple of people would have mentioned it, or maybe she would have had her Twitter blocked, that type of thing. But what's happened with the case of Chrissy here is, like, we're talking about millions and millions of pounds and images being scorned and people in her family being affected. Like, do you think that's fair because of who she is?
I think there certainly has to be an example made of it. And this is an example that's, she's big enough. It's like, an example you used, if it was like, say for example, it was like a girl in a high school or maybe a girl in a university who said something like this, and she said, go away and die. And then maybe her friends come across her Twitter account and they see these horrible things that she's been saying. She might lose some friends over that, Her friends
She could lose a job over it, really.
Exactly.
Down the line.
So if you think about it in terms like that, the proportional loss for her would be massive. If she was to lose friends and she was to lose her job, that would be significant as well. If something she did online was judged to be too harsh and people, boycotted her for it as a regular average Joe person, there would still be like significant repercussions for that if your online behavior was deemed to be, toxic enough to boycott. And when it comes to these celebrities, I think it's probably appropriate to make an example of it. And you're right, she's never going to be poor. She's never going to be on the street or anything like that. But I think she will have lost a proportional amount for this to matter. And that's how much you have to lose, I think. When something like this happens, you have to lose a proportional amount so that it changes you. Because if you don't significantly realize what you've lost, say for example, if she lost, you know, $1 million from this in total,
Oh, yeah, slap on the wrist. You know,
that would have never, she wouldn't, doesn't even look at her bank account, you know, she would never have even noticed that, but
she wouldn't have learned,
and she wouldn't have learned from it. But this seems like a proportional amount, you know, that you have to lose in order to realize, okay, actually I do need to change because I can't go through this kind of loss again, otherwise I'm finished.
Yeah, it does seem reasonable. You're right there, and like if we could like limit the damage control to that degree, it would be fine. It's just that it seems more often than not with these cancellation situations, the people that are going out to cancel, they want everything from them. You know, they want them to be completely and utterly. They want them to be homeless. Best case scenario at the end of this, they lose their job. So I agree that like in this situation, I hope it's like the kind of like wake up call. You know, and as you know, I do feel conflicted because it's like I do feel that her actions deserve consequences. I wish that could have happened 5 years ago. You know, when maybe she was closer to the person that actually tweeted those. It's because I imagine that if this Chrissy has changed, you know, you'd feel a bit fucking scorned about the fact that like that wasn't me. Like that was me 10 years ago, and I'm not that person anymore. But I'm paying for it. You'd wish you just paid for it at the time, you know, instead of being bitten in the arse 10 years later when you're like made it as a supermodel.
Although maybe 10 years ago, if it had happened and she'd be bitten then, her career might have...
It might have ended.
Ended.
Or not started. Yeah.
I think when it comes to this cancel culture, you and I have slightly different views on it in the sense that you think it's like an engine that can't really be stopped, and there's like only very specific scenarios in which you don't get cancelled in that instance. For instance, the other week when I spoke about this guy's toast, when I spoke about cancel culture, his position isn't inexcusable. I think his is like a borderline case where he had like edgy humour. Chrissy Teigan's case here is like, yeah, you've got some edgy humour, but you've also got some stuff here that's inexcusable and clearly over the fucking line. And I don't think there's anyone that's sitting in her corner and defending the go kill yourself tweets. You know, no one's doing that. So the severity of the cancel culture engine that goes for her is extreme. You know, whereas in this guy's toast case, it was clearly tongue-in-cheek jokes that were kind of edgy humour. So there wasn't enough motivation to take him out to cancel him. And to the point where the people who were trying to change him were even saying, we don't want him cancelled because they themselves realise there's not enough motivation to take him out. So they go for something else, you know. I think the severity of which the cancel culture engine goes after you is directly correlated to how inexcusable your behaviour is and how bad your initial action is.
Well, you can even take that, like, you can continue the analogy. You can say that the engine is much, you know, it's much worse if there's more fuel for the engine.
Exactly.
And like the more examples of like bullshit you've done in the past, the more, you know, bad the perceived crimes are, the worse the effect is. So actually, now I think about it, I suppose actually it's almost like self-regulating this engine that I imagine, you know, of the cancellation. It's because it's not just like you have a slight, your career is ended. We've seen evidence for the degrees to this, so that's promising, I suppose.
You're right in the sense that the initial tweets or the initial behaviour are like fuel for the engine, but you're also right when you say that if someone is well liked, if someone has a big following online, if someone has a powerful enough audience, there is also a larger force to stop the engine at the same time. You know, if the fan base will like push back, and those two things are kind of warring against each other, where it's like the engine's kind of got this power that's generating from the initial event that's happened, and then you've got your audience, which depending on how bad the thing was, a certain amount of them will throw you under the bus, but a certain amount of them will stick around with you, and then they're pushing back against the engine, and it almost does kind of self-regulate itself. So in a way, it seems like a good engine, but I do agree with you that a lot of the time there is a lot of people's motivation to cancel is like overblown, out of proportion, I would say.
I guess that is the problem, isn't it? Yeah, is that if people were doing this for the correct motivations of people being punished for unjust actions, that would be fine.
Yes, that's a good way to put it. It's not about punishing unjust actions for some people anymore. Some people just want to cancel people and, you know, go on this spree online, even though the things that are happening aren't like cancelable offences. You know,
right? Yeah. But I mean, that's the thing. Like, when I look at all this stuff with like Chrissy Teigen, I'm like acutely aware that people in the past have been cancelled for less. You know, I think much less. And I almost think like her actions are justifiable enough in our current climate to be cancelable for. You know, like there are instances where if someone else had done that, they would have been straight up cancelled. And it seems like almost unfair to me that, you know, like these other factors, so for instance, like your fan base or your likability, like do play a role in this. It's because like I'm sure that like if people didn't like Chrissy so much, this movie would have come out a couple of years ago. You know, people are keep constantly saying like, you know, oh, how didn't we know it was so toxic before? And that's because everyone liked her then, you know. So it's kind of, it feels like it's a bit of an injustice, but I suppose actually, to be honest with you, I'm walking out of this conversation with the most positive and understanding viewpoint of the act of cancellation before. Up until now, before I just thought it was like a blind mob that was just like going around with a scythe hacking down people.
And
But
some of it is.
And some of it is. That's exactly the point. But there are scenarios we've clearly witnessed where there's nuance to it. For instance, like see, like I like the idea if you have like the force of the fan base and you have the actions, you know, like the incriminating stuff. Well, like you at the very top, you've got PewDiePie, who's got like the biggest fan base you can imagine, and he said the N-word. You know, like you can't imagine
He can't be
any...
stopped now.
Yeah,
The force of his
exactly.
fan base is too much. The cancel
Yeah.
culture engine will never generate enough steam to cancel him at this point.
Yeah, he could do whatever you want. You know, you could like murder folk on stream.
Well, I don't think he can do whatever he wants.
Okay. You know, I'm going to use a bit of hyperbole here, but you know what I mean.
You know, I think if he'd said the N word and he'd like stuck by
If
his
he
guns,
called someone that, you know.
well, he did. He did call someone that on stream.
Oh
That
yeah,
was
but
what-
it was a video game character. It was like, you know, it wasn't like he wasn't walking by a black dude. You know.
True enough. But he also immediately
He was like,
sort of like it was kind of he came back on it. If he'd like stuck to his guns, I think there might have been a serious. I think YouTube probably has some motivation to take him out now as well, but that's maybe a topic for another day.
Yeah. Because Felix is a fascinating character, right?
Yeah, I think Chrissy Teigen's probably going to see a lot of short-term negativity towards this, but I think maybe in a year, maybe 2 years, people won't even be mentioning it in our tweets anymore.
No.
Like when she tweets, people won't even be talking about this anymore. So she'll see a lot of negativity from it, but I think it will blow over, and I think she'll be okay. But I guess we'll find out.
Yeah, I guess we'll find out. And yeah, just another it continues to amaze me how much there's to talk about cancel culture here. Like it's we started with the first episode where we talked about like death of the artist, and we kind of fumbled our way through that, and we had brief ideas about how this effect works, and I feel like we're slowly building up a more sophisticated view of how this functions in real life.
Yeah,
so, yeah, that's really what I want to talk about this week.